The demon rolled the die between its darkly smoking knuckles, staring at it. Then it sighed and dropped it to the table where it dissolved into mist. One of the kids, a curly-haired boy twiddling a pencil, made a disconcerted noise at the die's disappearance. "That was my favourite D20, he murmured, as if to himself. The demon distractedly twitched its spectral hand, and the pencil the boy was fiddling with began to bend. It twisted as if made of clay and started weaving itself into a spherical braid, with tiny splinters breaking off and curling into fine numbers. A heartbeat after the boy had dropped it, an intricately carved wooden die hit the tabletop. As the curly-haired boy picked it up with a gleeful grin, the demon sighed resignedly and looked up at the scrawny kid who stared at it, expectantly.
"Fine, I will do this for you, O summoner,"
it rumbled.
"Then I will take my leave and move on to more ambitious ones."
The curling pillar of dark fog began to twist upon itself more rapidly until a spinning column of black mist rose from the pentagram carved onto the table. Red lightning arced within, casting a bloody glow on the faces of the kids sitting around the table. The column exploded. The room was flooded with smoke. Curls of it drifted lazily through the air, and while the kids sitting round the table could see each other, the rest of the room was shrouded in black. Voices faintly echoed from the darkness, and red light shuddered in the shadow, until a figure suddenly emerged from the fog. A woman, wearing a ragged, stained apron, approached the table and stopped. She pulled a pad of paper from her waist and snatched a pencil from behind her ear.
"Welcome to the Drunken Mermaid. Would you lot like drinks or food first?"
she asked them roughly. The scrawny kid sat back in his chair. "So, we're in a tavern?" The scarlet light that had been glowing subduedly suddenly blazed with intensity, and the fog seemed to melt away around them. The room they had been in was gone, and they sat in the centre of a loud, crowded medieval tavern. Serving women pushed between tightly crowded tables, while bawdy men and women clashed mugs dripping with beer, and a fiddler danced his fingers over the strings in the corner. To the side, the bartender slid bottles across to the patrons and swept coins back behind the counter in a constant blur of motion. Wanted posters were plastered over each other on the far wall, illuminated by the many hanging globes of scarlet light, not unlike the demon's eyes.
"I'll take 3 beers, your strongest type,"
the girl exclaimed dramatically, then gestured to the rest of the kids.
"What about the rest of you?"
The curly-haired boy chuckled at her joke, but the serving woman took it in stride.
"Of course, although we do have a bit of a shortage lately. These bandits have been really running our stock dry. Now that I mention it..."
The scrawny kid interrupted her. "What about the backstories?" The entire room froze. The bartender stopped pouring drinks. The serving woman's pencil paused above the notepad, and the drunken man falling off the bench near the wall hung silently in midair. The table warped in front of the scrawny kid and pushed upwards as if someone was pressing their face into it from beneath. A face like a laughing mask, except somehow it was scowling. The demon's voice groaned through the room.
"Backstories? I didn't know I had to come up with your backstories,"
it rumbled in displeasure. The scrawny kid shook his head, and the curly-haired boy spoke up.
"Actually, I have a pretty neat one for my character, who is a dwarf named Volder Rockbreaker."
At this, an audible pop was heard, and the boy dropped down to a significantly shorter height in his chair. He shrieked at the change and shouted, "No, I meant elf!" Another pop, and he was a tall, willowy version of himself. "I lived in the forests near the Sleeping Mountains for most of my life." The fireplace in the corner sputtered to life with crimson flames and retched forth ashy smoke. The The smoke rose in front of the mantle and formed a wavering mountain range, with flickers of flame moving beneath them, vaguely humanoid in shape. Our town lived peacefully, and I was employed as a blacksmith, I was, the curly-haired boy said somewhat proudly. Rather good at it. The fire crackled and sent up a shower of sparks, disturbing the smoke and sending it swirling violently. A coin that had been frozen in mid-air suddenly dropped to the ground, and the sound of it striking the stone was a peal of iron against steel. Until a necromancer arrived. It wasn't like the stories. He just wanted more skeletons for his army. The fire blazed against the wall. The flames traced the barest outlines of dozens of faces that drifted up out of the fireplace, before the sparks blew out and only skulls of smoke rose to the ceiling and dissipated. I had been to the quarry examining a new vein of iron when the necromancer razed the town. So I survived. And I'm sworn on revenge! The curly-haired boy finished suddenly. The fire died down and resumed crackling fitfully, smoke rising out of sight into the chimney. I'm a human sorcerer, said the scrawny boy to fill the silence. The curly-haired boy and the girl both looked at him, along with the laughing mask pressing up out of the table. I don't have as good a backstory as that. That was pretty awesome, but I trained with my master for a long time until I was almost as good as him. One of the beers on a nearby serving woman's motionless tray tipped over and spilled in a growing puddle across the kid's table. The puddle began shivering and formed into two figures striding along the perimeter of the table, shimmering and amber. My master had a spell go wrong, and he's now terminally ill. I managed to put him in a state of suspension. At this, the beer on the table swirled into an oval, cocoon-like shape, with a figure walking away determinedly. And now I search for the cure to save him. The beer dissolved into a formless puddle in the center of the table, as all faces turned to look at the girl. She shuffled her feet slightly and looked around. I'm a human rogue, but my backstory is kinda secret for now. I guess it will come out with the rest of the game, okay, Mr. DM? She said towards the face in the table. It stared at her impassively for a moment, as if disappointed that she wanted to wait, then nodded. As it retreated back into the table, the room began to move again, and the serving woman moved away to fetch a rag for the beer spill, along with their drinks. At that moment, the door of the tavern thundered open to reveal a huge man wrapped in thick, woolen robes, outlined against the howling snow and wind echoing in the darkness outside. An immense broadsword was strapped to his back, and underneath his fur-lined hood was a massively scarred face. The curly-haired boy squealed in excitement, and the girl clapped her hands eagerly. The scrawny boy grinned and said, So, our adventure starts? Man, I am so excited for this. I bet you'll be the best DM ever. To the suddenly quiet tavern. No customers looked at him, but all the scarlet globes of light winked softly. The demon, a slight smile edging the corners of its ancient voice, rumbled.
We begin in a tavern shrouded in nighttime, in a land shrouded in winter, with a figure shrouded in mystery.